All right, welcome back to the Warrior Servant Leader podcast. We're so glad you are here today. Today is going to be, in my book, of our first 44 episodes. This is number 44. This one is hands down going to be the most unique one I've had so far. We got with us today Paul. He's a disabled veteran, served in the U.S. Navy. He's a seasoned Native American holy man, a title that was bestowed upon him by Granddaughter Crow. He has a lifetime devoted to spiritual service. He's investigated and cleansed an untold number of haunted properties. And Paul, I hope you get to share with us the mysteries at the Wyndham Inn today. And you've dealt with everything from mischievous poltergeists to dark entities that were so powerful that even your own life has been placed in danger on more than one occasion. You've worked at physical, spiritual, and emotional healing of people afflicted by dark attachments, malevolent energies, and even the occasional possession. You're more than a medium. You're deeply rooted in your Native American heritage and guided by your Christian faith as you walk in a unique spiritual path as a healer and a seer. Paul, man, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you here. And I'm looking forward to very exciting, interesting sharing of some of your path. And I want to start with, because I see you got that a photo of a leaping, I call it a leaping. That there. What's the deal with the submarine, and how'd you get that picture, man?
Almost looks like a bigger, badder submarine chased us out of the water, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What's going on, Pat? Thank you so much for having me on. This is awesome.
Oh, so that submarine, or do you call it a ship? I mean, I'm not a Navy guy. So a boat.
Boat. You can tell the submarine are from a skimmer. You know,
Oh, okay,
we call a submarine a boat, and a surface ship a ship.
okay. And
It actually
correct me.
started from when first submarine was built in Groton, Connecticut. You know, as small as a boat, so the name stuck and it stayed that way.
Wow, and you're from Connecticut,
I
so
am.
you got a deep attachment. So what's the story with that one?
So that's a picture of the USS Dallas SSN 700, made famous by our war patrols. But Tom Clancy did his part by writing the book The Hunt for Red October. So that's the boat in the command I was attached to for 3 years, 2 months, and we were deployed for 2 years, 1 month. That photo right there came to me in a story that kind of made me smile along the lines of keep the faith. Okay, and here's why. So as I'm trying to figure out life and do all those things, they pinned a 100% disabled rating on me and retired me from the Navy from injuries, trying to kill me a couple times. That boat ran me over once. We were surfaced and doing personnel or orders, paper transfers, and my tender wasn't paying attention, and I got sucked down between the boat and the surface ship. So if you see a submarine's round and a surface ship isn't, right, the two don't work together well. So if you drop something or somebody in between it, you're going to hear a lot of crunching, and that's what I heard. I was looking up, see about 1.5 feet of water, and I'm like, this is gonna suck. Crunch. Next thing I know, I was floating over the boat, watching them fish me out of the ocean. But the purpose of that photograph, they retired me. I had to deal with the VA. That whole process, I've written books on, is a process in and of itself. But I went into contracting. I got lassoed down to DC with my uncle and Rick Weidman, who's was number 2 running the Vietnam Veterans of America organization. And they put together a group that was called Vet Force. Their mission statement was simple: to enact laws for entrepreneurship for veterans and disabled veterans. And what they did in a apolitical way was got a series of laws and rules and so on passed, changed, including Public Law 1094/61, which is the Vet First Contracting Act, which means by law, the VA has to hire veterans and disabled veterans for all services first and foremost. construction, supply, logistics, and so on. When the law was upheld in an 8-0 ruling under Kingdom War versus VA, the executive order that Bush signed, 13360, mandated all federal agencies spend 3% of their budget directly towards veteran and disabled veterans. Okay, that's kind of the long version of how I got there. I spent 10 years as a volunteer. Actually, I was one of 8 nationally elected guys that sat on the board for that committee, representing over 300 service organizations. Anyway,
Wow.
So I ended up going into contracting, giving that a ride. And I got this call out of the blue from this place in the next state over in Rhode Island. And I went and pulled the docs and looked at it and said, this is a electrical upgrade. I'm like, I'm not an electrical contractor. And they said, no, they need you to do this. And they didn't know why. So I kind of blotted off and I'm like, I'm not an electrical contractor. Came back 3 times. And the third time it hit me, I could hear somebody saying, you need to take this project on. So I did. I put a number on it and we got to work. And when I went to the job site to do the pre-startup contract work, this guy steps out of his car and looks at me and he goes, "You a submarine sailor?" And I'm like, "Well, that's a fine how do you do," right? I don't know this guy from Adam. And I said, "Yes." And he says, "Really? What command?" I said, "Yeah, nice to meet you too. What can I do for you?" He says, "What command?" I'm like, "All right, here we go." So I was on the Dallas, I said, and he goes, "Hull number 700. He starts quizzing me. And I'm like, "Listen, man, I already qualified once. I'm not qualifying again. Okay." So he goes, "So you don't know who you're working for?" And again, I'm giving you the cliff notes here.
Yeah.
He goes, "So again, you don't know who you're working for, do you?" I said, "No, I got calls from people that said I need to take this job. I don't know why." But anyway, he said, "Well, the guy that you're working for technically is a vet." I said, "Yeah, I figured that part out." And he said, "But here's what you don't know. He's on, he's got ALS very bad. So he's on these ventilators and stuff and so on. So he's in a wheelchair. And these extension cords are coming out the windows of this house where his parents lived. He had to move back in with his parents. And that's their emergency backup to keep him alive if the power goes out." And I'm like, "All right." So I knew that in the write-up and, the docs and so on.
Yeah.
But what I didn't know was when I went into the basement, which is kind of a walk-in basement where he lived, just the basement below his parents, right? And again, this guy's pushing 40, 45, maybe a little bit older, right? Again, this is some decades ago. And I'm looking at this guy and he's smiling. He's got this big smile. And I look up on the wall and there's that picture, okay? Hand to God, I look at this guy and say, I'm looking at him and I see an insignia that says USS Dallas. And I'm staring at him. I'm like, "Man, you look familiar." He's got this thing in his neck and he really can't move a lot, but he's got great mobility to computers and such. Okay.
All right.
So he's looking at me with a smile and I could feel his excitement. All right. It's kind of one of my gifts, right? I can feel people's emotions and energy and so on. And I'm like, I can't place where I know him from. So his brother, who was questioning me out in the parking lot, out in the driveway, he says, "So it turns out you and him are on the same command together in the middle of the Indian Ocean back in the early 80s when he was the executive officer of the USS Dallas." Okay. And he made a decision to no longer, stay in the Navy. And he was being out chopped when I was being in chopped. So he was my executive officer for a very brief window on board the Dallas. Okay.
Wow.
So here comes the faith. They look at me and they said, "We couldn't find anybody who could do this work." Okay. Now we've got an exterior elevator that has to be built, whole electrical system upgrade and so on and so on. And I looked at him, I said, "I qualified submarines in 89 days, fastest in the history of any submarine sailor, while deployed and mess cranking, which means you're serving chow for 12 to 14 hours a day. And when you're not doing that, you're peeling 50-pound bags of potatoes, right?" Okay. So when I said to him, I qualified in 89 days on our boat, and I said, and he knew where we were because we were doing the back half of an IO run, which is a 6+ month deployment where you start out east and you keep going east, right? And he said to me, and the guy really couldn't talk, but his brother said to me, he goes, "When we found out who you were, he did the research on you and he couldn't believe it, all right, that a crew member would be coming here to take care of him." Okay. Now, mind you, when we got this contract, it was right after a hurricane. So every generator on the East Coast was gone. You couldn't
Yeah.
find, you couldn't buy a generator if you were, a billionaire with piles full of cash to throw at somebody. So that was our biggest obstacle. Anyway, I got on the phone and found 5 generators in 5 minutes, right, where nobody else could, right? Now people are looking at me going, oh my God, you're the greatest thing since, or the luckiest thing since. Well, maybe, but I have a lot of faith that things happen for a reason.
Yeah.
It took us a couple of weeks to get that place up to speed, but when we brought everybody in, man, he if you want to talk about having faith and believing in synchronicity and how the spirit world works, to me that's a classic example. Because when he saw me and I realized what our mission was, there was nothing going to stop us. Again, when you do business for yourself, you got that, you're always on that edge. But when something like this comes along and you're going to be taking care of a shipmate who's suffering, it adds to it, and the reward is priceless. The money's the money, but the reward for helping a shipmate is just plain priceless. That's the story behind how I acquired that picture. Oh, at the end of the job, he gave me the photograph, and his parting words, I was like, what am I going to do? Listen, my time is short here. You'll hold on to it and probably, tell the story. Sure enough, there it is.
Wow.
I took the photograph.
That whew, chills. It reminds me, of a piece I did once. I don't believe in coincidences. And we don't know each other that well yet, but I was abandoned in an orphanage when I was 3 days old in Dublin, Ireland, and ever since then, in fact, I ended up writing a book on it. And 40 years later, I actually met my birth mother, and I have a blood birth sister. And I come to find out that my birth father's name was William, my birth mother's name was Mary. The couple that adopted me, their names were William and Mary. and my birth sister goes, and she grew up thinking she was an only child. She didn't know about me. And she goes, I always wanted a brother, and she had to wait 40, years to get that. And we met in person in Ireland, and we named all our kids. Either their first name or middle name of 5 kids all had something to do with either my side of the family or my wife's side of the family. And we get to child number 4, and her name's Caitlin, and which was not a family name, so it was going to be her middle name. And we're just like, man, what? We can't come up with a name that flows with the name Caitlin. And I just had one sister. She just had one sister growing up. So we already had used those names because we had 3 girls, and she was the 3rd girl. So my wife's hairdresser goes, Elizabeth, Caitlin Elizabeth. It just kind of flows. So that's what we named her. And she was born in 1993, and it was 1997 when we met in person over in Ireland. And here my birth sister's middle name is Elizabeth. So, I don't believe in coincidences, and there's so many more, and I want to hear some of the stories you have to share, because I understand in our little brief, off-air conversation, you kind of resisted your calling into where you're at now in life. So fill us in, man. What got you to where you are today, and what were you running away from, so to speak?
Well, I was running away from myself.
Okay.
Right? I mean, that part's easy. Why? So ever since I can remember, I could see what everybody else couldn't. That's one thing. But I can feel and sense and hear everything from people's thoughts to their energy. They can't lie to me. I mean, occasionally people will get away with it, but very rarely. You had 5 kids. I had 6. Imagine those poor bastards, right? Right? Everybody, think about being a kid and saying, all right, I'm going to create this lie. And your dad standing there looking at you. Yeah. No, that's not what happened. This is what happened every time. Okay. Because you just can't lie to me. When people talk, these bubbles pop up and I see what's intended. You know, when people lie, it's almost like I can see the whole thing kind of, doing this, going in a distance. So, and again, when you're a child and you're calling grown-ups out, um, you were put in an orphanage. I had a stepfather that I named Crazy. All right. And, why I didn't want to do what I do. A part of it is because of what I wrote in this book. All right. And this will take you to when I was 13 or 14 years old and ended up being homeless. All right. And I was homeless because the cops were busting the door down. And, if they hadn't, one of the two of us would have been, taken out in a body bag. Neither of us were, but that was the end. I finally got big enough to say no more abuse. And to kind of give you a sense of the type of abuse, I never talked about my childhood my entire life. Never did. Right. And I'm trying to dovetail this conversation into your question. Why did I not want to do what I was called to do? Right. So as a child, I can see this stuff and I could see the dark energy that was stuck to and around Crazy. Okay. And again, Crazy is the name I gave this stepfather. All right. And beside him was this woman. Okay. And she hounded him, man. She hounded him and hounded him and hounded him. Well, this woman is in this white nightgown. Okay. I make the mistake of saying flowing dress, but it's not. It was a nightgown. And I could see the blood spots. And I see right now, I see the knife sticking out of her. Okay. And when this crazy bastard would do certain things, I could see her pointing at him. Okay. So here I am dealing with this wacko. And now I got this woman who's bloody and a mess. You were a cop, right? So you've seen.
Oh, yeah.
You see. Okay. So the aftermath of what I'm seeing in the spirit world. Okay. Except her form in the spirit world was her death face. Okay. Her death body. Right. So that's something that, I still see the woman now. I try to help her, but she's stuck. I don't want to get off on a tangent on that. Anyway, those are the things I'm seeing in part, along with all kinds of other stuff. Okay. So when like this Crazy that I had to deal with for, the better part of my childhood would say things or do things, I would look at him and go, that's not true. And oh my God, did the war start? Right. Imagine, the 1960s, 1970s, when you look at a grown up and without saying the words, go fuck yourself, you're calling them out by saying, that's not true. Okay. How fast those backhands are moving.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, no matter how badly this guy beat me, and I mean beat me, I never quit. I never surrendered, and I would never give in. Never gave him an inch. Never. In fact, I didn't realize how bad the abuse was until I wrote the book. And this is the hand of God true story. I wrote this book and I handed it to my wife published and said, you want to know about my childhood? Buckle up. Okay. Now we've been together with the wind chill factor 50 years.
Wow.
Okay?
Congrats.
Without the wind chill factor, my wife tells me it's close to 37 or 38 years. Okay. But when you factor in the other piece, it's been a while, right?
Yeah.
So my wife takes the book, just normal, starts reading it, stopped talking to me for days and days and days. And when she would look at me, she just burst out crying. And I could feel her heart crushing or crushed. So it took her, a period of time to not just read the book, digest it, but then to come to me and say, I'm sorry. I had no idea, but I got to tell you this. You weren't abused. You were tortured.
Wow.
Now you've been around people like me, right? So the consequences of trauma and heavy abuse, right?
Yep.
I was destined to be, a drug addict, locked up in prison, all those things. Okay. When my wife says to me, you weren't abused, you were tortured. I had to take a deep pause and I had to reflect on my own self, right? Who the hell wants to tell somebody you were tortured? Okay. Listen, I've talked to a lot of veterans who, my uncle Paul, Vietnam, blah blah blah. I mean, I've been around a lot of guys. I've never heard one of them tell a story about being tortured. Never, never, ever, never. Okay,
Yeah.
you don't see them on YouTube. You just don't. Why? Who the hell wants to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So I not only didn't want to talk about my life, I was confident that I was not a useful part of society. Now, deep inside me, I knew that to be wrong. But from the outside, the trash on the other side of the tracks mentality that, I spent the majority of my young life up until the age of 17 when I went in the military, and then on top of that, you see what I see and you sense and know what I know. And you can tell good people and bad people by just being near them. Okay. It put me in a box. I put myself in a box that I needed to isolate. I needed to keep this to myself. Okay. And I would do my things. And, again, as a child, I was around powwows and going to, we were part of the North American Indian Club, which was an organization here in the late 60s, early 70s, into the 80s before it became two of the largest casino tribes in the country. Right. Anyway, we were part of that group before it became, before it got into the money. Anyway, I didn't really understand the difference or the gifts that I had, and what I could see told me that I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to deal with this. Right.
Oh, wow.
When you get into book 2 of the Crazy series, it'll be out here in early next year.
Hey, but before you do that, only because some people aren't going to watch the video, tell us the name of the book, because on the audio, I wrote it down, but
the name of the book is 2,442 Steps to Crazy, The Beginning. It's book 1 in a series. Now, quick story on the title, 2,442 Steps to Crazy, The Beginning. Okay. In there's one character named Bethany, a real life person, and every one of my books are true stories. Okay. And the characters are real, even on the ghost side of things. Okay. Hold that thought. Anyway, Bethany is the main character early in the book. All right. Young girl, puppy love, all of that, 7th, 8th grade type stuff. Anyway, when I wrote this book, I reached out to her and said, hey, listen, I'm putting this out and you're in here, but I used a different name. I just want to make sure you're all right with that. She said, well, I'm glad you're telling your story. Well, when the book came out, she called up and she goes, how'd you figure out the name for this? And I go, well, it's kind of self-explanatory. It's a number of steps between point A and point B, right? And what it took to get there. And she goes, do you know anything else about the number? I'm like, no. She goes, did you know it was an angel number? I said, 2442? No. So I Googled it. Sure as shit, it's an angel number, right? So I thought that was, again, synchronicities. I don't buy into them. Everything happens for a reason. So when you think something's synchronized, pay super close attention to it, because there's a lot more to it. Anyway,
wow.
For me, that was my early life, pre 14 years old. And then, I spent the next 3-4 years, as a guest on somebody else's house after I was homeless for a period of time. And then I went in the military at 17. And, there was, of course, a well-dressed gentleman, who had, immaculate tie and he always wore this black robe. Okay, that he used when he usually stepped up onto this chair with this bench in front of him, and he was overlooking his parish. I mean, the other people that the bailiffs brought in, right? So he was curious. Well, he wanted to make sure I went in the military. You following the metaphor here?
Yeah.
Okay, the guy in the robe. Okay?
Yeah.
So when I was 17, yeah, he wanted to see my enlistment papers. He was eager to make a deal as long as I was, in the military. I mean, I knew I was going anyway, but. Turns out he was a Marine, ended up being a judge. So prosecutor, I write about it in book 2, how the prosecutor was out of his mind, pissed off that the judge kind of let me go. And as long as I went and joined the military. So again, God put some wild people in front of you.
Wow. So did you ever feel like, was this a gift or a curse as a kid, or did you think other kids had the same experience you did, and this was not out of the ordinary? I mean, how'd you struggle or get through that as a 5 and 6, 7-year-old? or even as a young adult?
Well, my first memory is flying through the air when Crazy ripped me by my arm and threw me across his room. I remember flying through the air, and I can remember that brief moment. It was almost like peace. And then I hit the corner of that couch and chair or whatever it was and cracked a rib or something. And holy Lord, did that hurt. Okay. So that's kind of my first memory, but it parallels something else. All right. That voice inside of us, that thing that keeps us going in the toughest of times. All right. That overwhelming sense of you're going to be okay. This is going to pass. You'll be okay. And I kept hearing this constantly. So it was an internal struggle with what I was dealing with externally, if you will. Okay. So no, I didn't think anybody else had these gifts, not after, well, I guess I should say that differently. I assumed everybody could do what I could do, and I still make that mistake, right? I look at people and I assume they know what I know, and it's just crazy to think that way, you know. But I considered it a curse more than a gift for the longest of time because I didn't know how to use it. I didn't know how to understand it. And when they're showing you butchered people and stuff like that, it's not easy to, who do you tell, right?
Yeah.
You
So
tell the wrong person, you're locked up. Listen, if the
yeah,
VA watches these videos, they'll come back and try to throw me in lockup, right? They'll, I'm going to put you in a 6-month hold because you hear voices, right? God help you if you go to the VA and say, yeah, I heard an angel say to me, fill in the
yeah,
blank, right? Okay,
yeah,
no, they're putting you in 6 months of lockup. So that's what I deal with today, right? What do you think it was like dealing with in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, if you will, right? I
yeah,
mean, Lorraine and her husband, the Warrens, right? They got their newest trilogy about their lives is out, right? They live an hour from me, or used to, I should say. Their house is an hour from me, but that was just starting. Okay, the whole paranormal thing was taboo, right?
yeah,
So again, in my book, Mysteries at the Wyndham Inn, we talk about why was this woman hanged? Well, because they outlawed the burning of witches, right? So being a native in the 70s was was as unpopular as being Irish in the, my wife's Irish Catholic. Her parents are from Cork, or grandparents are from Cork, and right off the boat in the early 1800s, right? So it was like when I was in the Navy, it was sailors and dogs keep off the grass in San
yeah.
Diego, but I went in post Vietnam, so I didn't face what they faced, but you know where I'm going with this. Anyway, kind of lost my trend, Pat.
No. Well, what was your aha moment that you you were able to? Because I call it we all have a fear factor, and for some people, fear is forget everything and run, and then for other people, there's there's fear of the unknown. There's apprehension, but they use that fear to face everything and respond. So it's the same word. It's just how we harness that and what we do with it. And when did your fear factor go from forget everything and run and just ignore it and don't tell anybody to the aha moment of, hey, I'm going to face this, I'm going to respond, and it's gotten you to where you are today? Or was there an actual moment that you realized that?
So I'm going to say yes and no. Yes, there was an absolute moment, and no, because it kind of all built up. I knew it was going to happen, and I just fought it until an event happened that flipped me over the fence and said, "No, I got it." So let me get into it. Um, well, okay, fear factor. First and foremost, like I said, I'm standing up to this crazy bastard my whole existence. Okay. And I put myself between him and my mother and my siblings and so on and so on. I take the beatings and so on. And as I got bigger, okay, the fear followed my size, if you will, right? The bigger I got, the less his size intimidated me. Okay. Until it came to the point of, I'm never going to lose another fight again. And I haven't. Right. So fear was kind of walking hand in glove with reality because the living scared me so much more than the spirit world. Because while spirit world was scary, I didn't understand it, but it didn't harm me, right? And there were parts of the spirit world that constantly comforted me. Okay. So there was that, yin and yang, that struggle inside of how's the spirit world work when I'm looking at the real world and they suck, right? People suck. Okay. Now the spirit world, right? They really haven't done anything to me. Okay. Now, again, I didn't know this, but that's the feeling I had. Okay. I knew that they were protecting me and these dark things want to get at me. So there was this battle going on that I was a part of, but I really wasn't. You following me?
Yeah, I
the
do.
Spirit world was doing its part to protect me, but why couldn't they protect me against this rat bastard? Right?
Yeah.
Why couldn't they protect my siblings and my mother and so on and so on? Okay. So that's where my is what the F, God? How does this work? What? Why do I see all this stuff? Why are you putting me through this? Why on God's green earth do you do these to me? Let me give you an example. My wife and I are in a bar 3-4 decades ago, and we're doing what reasonably young people do who have 5-6 kids and they're trying to escape their children for an hour or two, right? Duck in a bar and it's get a little goofy. So we're in this bar. My wife's next to me, as she always is, and this woman brushed up against me. Okay. And without anything registering in my mind, just snapped my head, looked at her and said, "Oh, you have cancer," right? Words just out of my mouth. I'm hearing the words as she's hearing them, as my wife's hearing them, and as is her boyfriend of this person I've never seen in my life. Okay. Now her boyfriend was 9'11" with an attitude. Okay. And I'm like, oh Lord, you walked me into this one. Okay. Well, the look on her face told a story of pure, what did this guy just say to him? Okay. I mean, that's what he was looking at me for. She reaches up and puts her arm on him. It was one of those, I could feel the energy where she was telling him without saying a word, no. Okay. And she's looking at me. She goes, "I need to know. I've never told anybody that. In fact, I just found out I have cancer this morning." Okay. So and I'm trying to get out of this conversation quickly. And that's the extent of the conversation. So I look at my wife and she knows. So she slips in between us and I turn and I head for the bar, And the lady ended up talking to my wife for a period of time, but I didn't want anything more to do with it, But that's an example that's happened to me and still does thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of times. Sometimes people, even on podcasts, will say something. I'll blurt something out that'll make everybody go like this. And I'm like, yeah, that wasn't me, but something came through, right? That's a hard thing that's a hard lesson I had to learn about being a messenger. And again, what's a holy man? What's a shaman? What's a Heyoka? Well, they all have their different parts and pieces, but in essence, it's being a messenger. It's being able to talk to the living, being the medium, the conduit, the hollow bone, to move messages from the spirit world into the living. Okay. Now, what's the purpose of me saying to that girl, "Oh, you have cancer"? I have no idea. I can only guess. And my best guess is that she was so afraid of having cancer that she wasn't going to tell anybody. And my message was to get it out there. Okay. Now, again, that's pure speculation. I don't know why. I never met with the girl, even though she wanted to, she spent some time with my wife. She wanted to know the whys. Why do I know? I wasn't ready to find out for myself. Why do I know? Okay. Now, this is a long-winded story of the aha moment and the fear factor. So there was still fear over what I don't know, right? A poltergeist, when you see something throwing something around a room, it can get your attention and generate some fear, right?
Yeah.
Well, between my time with living with crazy, being in the military for a handful of years, and dealing with some shit, right? Those things have a way of knocking a lot of the fear out of you. But the fear of the spirit world is a whole different animal. Okay. You're just seeing a ghost materialize can freak a normal person out, right? To me, it's cool as it gets, but I've always seen these things. It's the interaction that became fearful. Okay. Because I didn't know what to do. What do you do? How do you have a conversation with a ghost? How do you have a conversation with a dead person? Right? How do you tell somebody I'm not doing that when they're in the spirit world? Right? Okay. I mean, it's a battle. So and then how do you protect yourself? Because you're taking on their energy. So there's so much to this, Pat. Okay. And when people say, well, what's a holy man? it will take me hours and hours and hours to explain to you what my understanding of a seasoned Native American holy man. And if you'd like to know how I got that title, remind me later, because I'm going to keep rambling until you throw something at the computer screen and tell me to shut up. All right. Go back to the fear and the aha moment, right? Because they merge. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And at that point, when I hit my point and the two broke, changed my life from that moment forward. Ready? All right. Remember what I said about, God, why are you doing this to me? Why do I see all this crap? Why am I the messenger? Why do I have to do this? Okay.
Yeah.
When I had enough, and I mean I had enough, and I said, all right, I'm going to pause for a moment and put up protection. God, Great Spirit, hear me and protect this conversation as it is just telling a story. I do not ask for it to happen. Circle us in light and love, and only white light beings may enter. Okay. I'm telling you right now, the most terrifying thing I've ever seen and done in my life. I got to a point where I'd had enough. Okay. I can't do this anymore. And all the beings that are around me, white light beings, I ordered them. Remember, we have free will, right? Everybody understand free will? Well, you better take your free will very seriously. Okay. God gave you free will. Now pay attention how stupid you can be with your free will. Ready? I have my free will. Okay, and I'm pausing those words carefully because I don't want them to come out again. I'm ordering everybody to leave me be and back up. Remember, spirit world, I'm just using this as an example of what happened. As God is my witness, I watched my gatekeeper, my guardian angel, and I could feel the rest of the positive white light forces back up. It was like a vacuum was being created around me. And especially my gatekeeper drew back, it instantly reminded me of when I was 30 feet above the submarine, watching them pull my body out of the ocean, right? I could feel and sense everything, including my guardian angel, okay? But there was no dark, negative, gray energies. It was all pure white light, right? So now here I am ordering everybody to get away from me, okay? And the second I do that, start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because this is how long it took. As they drew back, second one, in floats this serpentine tube of nastiness. It was second 2, getting closer, growing in length and girth. Second 3, it's getting more slimy. And it turns its face and it looks at me. It felt, it tasted, it smelled absolute pure evil. It is the only time I've ever tasted it like that, smelt it, sensed it, saw it, then or now. It's the only time it's ever happened to me. Second 4, it's looking at me. Second 5, I can hear it. I'm coming for your soul and you can stop me. I have never been so terrified in my existence, not before or since. In that 5, maybe 10 seconds, okay, maybe, I realized how badly I effed up. And I said, Lord, I got it. Please, I'm begging you, bring the protection back. And I started doing my prayers, okay? You think it would end there, right? And this thing would slither away? Nope. A spiritual battle went into play. And as this thing came in, because it assumed I had surrendered and given up my free will, well, my protection knew better. When I begged it to come back, it came back, and it came back with a vengeance. And there was a battle to get this thing the hell out of here. And that was my first true witnessing of absolute good over absolute evil. Okay. And I mean absolute. I'm not going to get into all the things that came in to deal with this thing, but I'm just going to tell you that if you don't believe in Archangel Michael, I strongly encourage you to believe in Archangel Michael. If you don't believe in white light, I encourage you to, because that's the only thing that saved my soul when I almost surrendered my free will.
Wow. So, offline, I told you I always carry a rosary. What I didn't tell you in that story with the demonic kid is I wanted so bad it was a Hollywood kind of moment, is I wanted to get my rosary out just so I could put the crucifix on his forehead, kind of deal. But you talk about Saint Michael the Archangel. Not only do I have the rosary, but this is my challenge coin, and that's the shield on there. Is I 100% believe in saints in the what you would call the spirit world, and it is a battle of good versus evil in a spiritual sense, and then we have to live through those battles in the physical reality of our everyday life. Wow. Can you talk about the mystery at the Wyndham? Because you've written several books that are autobiographical in a sense.
Yep.
What's the importance or the impact of the Wyndham Inn?
So the story I told you about the pure evil that was coming for me because I effed up, right?
Yeah,
And said I've had enough of
yeah,
seeing and doing what I do. Okay. Mysteries of the Wyndham Inn is a identical story, if you will, okay, about how darkness there has been attacking the living for hundreds and hundreds of years. Okay. So in the Mysteries of the Wyndham Inn, right? Right. The
yeah,
first book is titled The Feral Feline. Um, the story and the characters are real, right? The main character, which his name is Master Gary, he showed up at my house a couple of years ago and just showed up in his motorcycle. And if you read the book, you'll understand the importance of the motorcycle. Okay. Again, he lived there 40 years before I wrote this book. And he just shows up. He's a guy I grew up with, and we kind of went different paths at the age of, high school age or so. And then I went in the military and we lost contact, but I'd see him every now and again. Anyway, he showed up at my house and says, "Hey, I got to tell you about the Wyndham Inn." And I'm like, "What? Okay, why?" And he goes, "Well, because," and he just starts talking. Okay. And he's telling me about this black cat that used to attack him at night in his room. All right. When the Wyndham Inn was converted to a true colonial inn into a bunch of apartments. Okay.
okay,
So he lived there for a handful of years, and he started telling me the story about how this black cat would attack him at night, and he would wake up flailing, trying to get this cat off of his head. And, he'd turn the light on, and there was no cat in his room. Okay. And he's like, I would think it was just a dream if it wasn't for the scratches. Okay. And I'm like, well, how do you know you didn't scratch yourself? Now I know his story is true because I can see these bubbles popping up.
yeah,
Okay. So I looked at him and I was being funny because I could see his scratches. And I said, "So, you got any scratches you don't want to talk about?" Because I knew it was coming. I saw some. And he looks at me and I goes, "You mean like the ones that were on your back? What'd your girlfriend think of that?" And he goes, "How did you know that?" Okay. And I'm like, "Well, I can see things." Anyway, um, the whole point of the story starts with the feral feline, the one that the main character, Master Gary, a real life person, told me about. So I started doing more research. And this, fire department, police department, and so on have been called to this property, countless times over the decades, if not centuries, for scratching in the walls, for cats meowing in the chimney. Fire department comes, they can't find anything, right? So I've talked to a lot of people, and more people are coming out of the woodwork telling me their stories. But at the heart of the Mysteries of the Wyndham Inn is the same battle of good versus evil that I faced my entire life. But when you try to tell these stories in, Steps to Crazy, or in another book I wrote, A Date with Suicide, which dives deep into the suicide pandemic that's plaguing our veterans and our population, especially law enforcement. Okay. Those are much heavier topics. They all circle on the same points, but the Mysteries of the Wyndham Inn comes at it from an angle that, most people think they're reading a mystery, right? And
yeah,
it is a mystery because there are mysteries inside this mystery. That's a much longer conversation. But the point is, all the things I write are all the same. They're mixed with the spirit world, the baby Jesus, my Native Americanism, what surrounds me, white light beings, dark entities. It's just I have a gift of being able to tell a story that, as people tell me, when they read my books. They say, man, it's like being a fly on the wall. I can see it, sense it, feel it. Everything you write jumps out at you. And it makes me laugh because it goes to my ability to type, right? Because that's all I can do. I can type. I can't spell. I can't do, grammar. I can't edit, right? I still don't know the difference between an adverb and an adjunct professor, right? So, I'm truly passing this stuff on when I type, and I can feel the energy embedded into the words when I write these stories.
Are you familiar with the Stanley Hotel in Colorado?
I
It's
want
in
to say
the
yes, but I'm not. It's not.
it's
I'm
at
seeing the big one with the white, all white with the black shutters.
yeah, it's in a
Hold
Red
on, don't say
Roof.
anything else. Hold on, don't say anything else. So is it like I see 4 stories and a fifth is the attic, and it's not a U, but it's broken in like into 2 wings or 3 wings, a center and then a right and a left wing. Is that right?
Yes,
It's got a big portico that you drive under.
yes. I'm
Okay,
looking
so
at a
that's what
picture. I'm online.
okay.
I'm looking at a picture of it. Yes.
So that's what I see when people talk. I see these pictures and these images. Now, if I want to focus in, I could actually go in. All right, I can't say anymore. Never mind.
All right. Well,
Let me explain. Let me explain why. Ego is the worst thing, the worst emotion to the human being, and
yep.
I have to be very mindful of where I stand. I'm a representative of the spirit world, and I'm
All
only
right.
supposed to say so much.
Absolutely. One of the best books ever written by Ryan Holiday. That's the name of it. Ego is the enemy.
Is it?
Yeah, and a fascinating book. And young guy, he's in his 30s, I think, when he wrote it. He's written a lot of books, but ego is the enemy, and its twin brother is greed, and all that. But it just when you're talking about the Wyndham Inn, is like the Stanley Hotel it's in Estes Park, Colorado, which is the national forest. Is right there. And I actually know a comedian that has performed there, and he's like, yeah, my room was haunted, and I've never been back, kind of deal, because he's afraid to go back.
Well, invite me out. Let's go have some fun.
Yeah, well, come on out. You can stay at our place. Uh, so here's I got to ask this. I got to ask this question. How does your wife, your kids, or now that people know who you are and what your gifts are, how has that affected your relationships as far as that they're like, I'd be, if I was your kid, I'd be scared shitless that, that, I, I don't know. How's it affected your relationships with people, good, bad, or ugly?
Yeah, that's a deep question. Ready?
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, I stepped away from my children, all of them, and my grandchildren. Okay.
Yeah.
I spent about a year figuring it and a hard month. I want to say meditating on it, but not, kumbaya, sitting in a chair. I mean, I do meditate, but I spent a month, literally a bonfire, 20 feet from here, trying to figure out, why, what am I supposed to do? How's this work? All right. Because I have done everything in my power to help my children. But when they start, it gets to a point that they are draining the life out of you, and you're not getting back what you're putting out. You gotta make a change. And it's among the toughest things I've ever had to do. I had to step away from all of that in order to fulfill what and who I am. Now, I'm not telling people out there to walk away from your family. That's not what I'm telling you. Okay. For me, it's what I had to do. And once I did that and it settled, meaning, we go through a grace period, if you will, when we make decisions to make sure you're going to stick with them. And I'm talking about from a spiritual point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Once the spirit world knew that my intent, because again, everything works on intent, right? My intent was true, was pure, that, I'm ready to step into the next realm. they started feeding me the whys. I'm not going to get into them too much here, but I will say that part of the reason was you have to get rid of your distractions. Now, is family a distraction? For me, it was. Okay, it was a tremendous distraction. With my ability to see, sense, and know what I know, very few people want to be around me, and I get it. Fortunately, I've got the greatest wife on the planet, and she's always stuck by me. Okay, and she's a hardcore Irish Catholic woman. Okay, 100% Irish. Okay, so
I know that. I know
battle,
that. I know that battle. Yep.
right? So for me, stepping away not only from that, but I had to grow. I had to do some things that a warrior does that the average person can't. What am I talking about? I had to redefine parameters. I had to reestablish what I am and who I am. Well, the people around me tell me I'm going back to my authentic way, right? I said, okay, what does all that mean? Go back to your authentic way. Well, the influences that surround us, okay, keep us from our path. If people aren't encouraging me, for an example, to do the things that I have the gifts to do, then, those aren't the people you need to be around. So for me, I was looking at how much I was putting out and how much I was getting back. And the reward just wasn't there. There wasn't. It was reverse. It was almost like I was stuck, in a grown-up version of my own steps to crazy. Okay. Not the abuse, just the neglect, if you will. Okay. So my children don't really respect me. They don't appreciate me. And it got to a point where all they saw me for was a meal ticket. Okay. And when I would ask them to do something or tell them to do something, then they wouldn't. I said, why? Why am I ingrained in all of this? Okay. What am I doing? When I stepped back from all of that, my whole world began to change. Didn't change overnight, but it began to change. And and more importantly, I was able to turn all that energy back towards spirit and, stay focused on that. Now, again, let me caveat that so anybody listening to this doesn't say, I'm going to step away from my family here. Okay. 3 years and was it 9 months ago, 7 months ago, 3 years and 9 months ago, I had a dream, and I have my dream log, and I dream all the time, and I write all this stuff down. Okay. It's called, prophecy, right? What's coming, what do you got to do, and so on. Well, this particular dream showed up, and I did not want to write it down, but it kept coming. Finally, I woke up and I said, fuck. Right? With as much anger as you can muster. And I write down, these are the words I write down. Terry has cancer. Who's Terry, you ask? My wife. Okay. 3 years and 8 months ago. This is my dream. 7 months ago now, she was diagnosed with non-curable, aggressive breast cancer. Okay. For 3 years, I never said a word. What do? Walk up to your wife and say, hey, you're going to have cancer somewhere down the road? What do? Nothing. Again, it's another lesson. It's a lesson about ego, about keeping your mouth shut. But it's also a message about the spirit world will let you know what's coming. The question is, can you handle it? And that's one of the hardest lessons I had to learn. Now, how do I get around my family when I can see these things, sense them, feel them, dream them, know them? How do you get around anybody when you can look at them and see their lifeline or see no lifeline? Okay. Another quick short story. My daughter-in-law married a combat vet. Okay. I could see exactly where it was going. Not only is he heading down the same path as me, PTSD, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But I could see his lifeline was about that big. So I did what I thought was best, and I did what I could to help. But again, I can only be the conduit. You have to be willing to do the work. If you're not going to do the work, it doesn't work. Right.
All right.
So I started putting my 2 cents in there and, got him off of the path he was on, got him on the right path, and he's fine. And this is decades. Okay. But in the course of that conversation that changed, I had one of those, oh, you got cancer moments when I'm looking at the two of them on their couch and just started going on this rant about they're going to have the toughest month of their life coming up. Okay. right? And that was kind of the start of the fracture where I knew I needed to step away, right? Again, this is many, many years ago. Well, when my daughter's child was born, day number one, next thing you know, he's in emergency. He's prepping for emergency surgery because his heart had a defect. Okay. And what did it take? 1 month. It took 1 month from birth to releasing that child from the hospital. So my daughter and her husband looked at me and they said, "How did you know that was going to be the worst month of our lives?" Okay. Now I've done this so many times I could sit here until the power in the world runs out telling these stories. Okay. How does my children look at me? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So is this a mutual walk away? I tend to think so. Okay. For a lot of reasons. Okay. But how do you keep introducing yourself into an environment where the people around you know things? Does that make them terrified to talk to me? Probably. Who wants to know the future? Nobody. Oh, everybody says they do. But I have a very standard rule,
only if it's good news.
right?
They
I
want
have
to
a
know.
very standard rule. If you want to know, ask. If you don't want to know, don't ask.
Right.
Now, I started that back when my wife and I were first together. I said, "Listen, you want to know about my past? Ask. If you don't want to know, don't ask." Okay. And she's been smart enough never to ask. Of course, I wrote the book, and now she had a lot of questions answered. But the point is that that stepping away isn't, in hindsight and in current visibility, it's not a singular thing. Meaning it's not just something I needed to do. It just needed to happen. Period.
Right.
Now, when I talk to other people who are doing this type of work, the crazy part is so many of us are doing the same thing. We're having to step away from that, the comfort zone, if you will, and focus on what we're here to do. Because if your listeners take anything away from this discussion, know this: we are in a spiritual war. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't screw around with it. We are in a spiritual war. Okay. Either get on the white light side or be part of the problem, because the darkness is going to suck up those who are not on the white light side. Don't believe me? Again, I don't get into politics. I don't get into political discussions, but just take a look at the world in its place right now and look at where it was over the last number of decades. And you tell me what's going on. Again, I know what's going on. Now, I got to be careful. I don't know what's going on. All of my senses show me that we are in a massive spiritual war.
Absolutely. 2,000 years ago, more than 2,000 years ago, you look at the prophets in the Old Testament, there's no doubt that it's spiritual, and in the battle, but that spiritual battle is also lived out in the physical reality of our lives. Man, a couple of things that you shared, you may not have listened to all the episodes before this one, but we did one a few weeks back. A Marine veteran, and we titled it. We came up with the title at the end is "Sometimes You Just Have to Let Judas Walk." You know what's coming. Christ knew that Judas was going to betray him, and he let him walk. And sometimes in our relationships, however they're going, sometimes you just have to let Judas walk. But, and I got to ask you this question, even though he had to let Judas walk, or you had Jonah, who ran away and God got his attention real quick, or Jeremiah tells us, that God knew us before we were formed in the womb, and the word for "knew" is love. God loved us before we were formed in the womb, and He consecrated us. That means He commissioned us, He gifted us with a purpose before we're ever born. And if you grasp all those concepts and believe them, then that changes how you live your life, at least in my book. So my wife always gets after me. Don't say "but." That you just, when you do that, then everything you just said before is canceled out. Say the word "and" instead of "but." And I have to ask this question. Even though you had to separate and step back in your relationship with your family and whatnot. What did forgiveness play a part? Have you reconciled with them, or is it still? And even if it is still that arm's length distance, is there a moment in all that you, because you said they didn't respect you, they weren't giving back the reward, the imbalance and whatnot. Have you forgiven them for having that attitude towards you because of your gifts and your calling?
So I don't know. Forgive them. I don't know. Is there anything to forgive? You know, again, at the tip of the spear is respect, right? And they just don't respect me. Okay, so how do you forgive somebody for not respecting, right? I guess I didn't earn it. So the only thing I can say is that, when you're not getting respect and courtesy, then my conclusion is that I haven't earned it, right? So if I haven't earned it, then I haven't done enough for them, my children, to entrust that I'm worthy of their respect, right? So there's nothing there there's nothing there to forgive.
I get what you're saying, because I carried the burden of I mean, I got the screws put to me professionally, and then it affected me personally, with panic attacks and all sorts of stuff. I had a boss that even tried to get me indicted, tried to get me fired, and for all the wrong reasons. And I was exonerated in the end, but it took about 2 years. But during that time period, and for the 5 years following that time period, I actually despised this person, and I didn't do anything to them personally or professionally, but it was I was the target for their revenge that they blamed me for, which I had absolutely nothing to do with. I hated that person for 5 years. And I mean, I would say things like, if they die before I do, I'm going to, go get me a case of beer, get drunk, and then, what, all over their grave, type deal. And it wasn't until my aha moment was, you talk about that spiritual battle, is that was a demonic, if you will, hatred that I had for this person, and they could give a rat's ass how upset I was. They didn't care, and the only person that it was eating, inside out was me. And I never went to this person and go, "Hey, by the way, I forgive you for trying to f me over all those years ago." But I did sit down in quiet time and actually genuinely forgive this person for what they did to me. And I don't forget it, but it's like it was my let Judas walk kind of moment. So I'm a big advocate that when we are wronged, particularly when, you know, wrongly wronged. I mean, it's one thing to be held accountable for something you've done, and you get punished for it. And I get that. It's when you're getting screwed over and it's not just that our reaction, that ego, goes, I'm going to punch you in the mouth kind of deal. Whereas from a Christian standpoint, we are called to forgive your enemies. So I just throw that out there. I know we're all brought up with you have to earn respect and all those kinds of things, but we were also brought up wrongly. If you want it done right, do it yourself. It's a catchy way of saying it's all right to be egotistical, which it's not all right. So I don't know. I just throw that out there that I don't have the gifts you have, but I do have a appreciation for the power of forgiveness, even if it doesn't mend the relationships or other things to genuinely. I mean, even Christ said from the cross, forgive them for they know not what they do. So anyway, man, we could go for hours. When's your next book coming out?
Beginning of the year, book 2 of the Mysteries at the Wyndham Inn comes out. I'm doing some final edits on it now, and I'll get it out here probably somewhere in January. And the best place to get these books, any of my books, are on Amazon. Short and simple, D. Paul Fleming, Amazon. Buy them. Good read. You get your $20 worth. Trust me.
That's awesome, Ed. And when we get done, don't jump offline. I'm going to talk to you about something, but I don't want to release it for public at this point. So how can people get a hold of you? I mean, individually, if they have these experiences, whether it's because it's very, very clear that your mission is to help other people to battle darkness and to be a light in troubled times. And if someone is experiencing the phenomena that you're talking about, whether it be a haunted home or a relationship, or even they see a darkness in themselves that they want to deal with, how do they get a hold of D. Paul?
So the simplest way is to tell the spirit world to send a messenger, and I'll get a message and we'll figure it out. Otherwise, you can email me. All right, I got a Facebook page, but I'm not joking about if you really need my help, talk to the spirit world and tell them to send a messenger to my gatekeeper, and the spirit world will make it happen. Okay, and I'm not joking about that. All right, but if you've got other reasons you want to reach out, my email is dpaul@blackhawkbooks.com. There, my email's in all my books, and I've got a Facebook page and some other social media pages out there. But I don't know why they just don't reach out to you there, Pat. Just call up Pat.
Yeah,
tell them you want to meet with me. Okay, and to set up what Pat ought to be doing is having an open telephone mic day. Get all these folks out there that are your guests and put them on. Let's have an open dialogue and start answering questions. People can say things to me, and I can describe the hotel or whatever building they're talking about for them and freak them out too. How much fun is this, Pat?
That's a brilliant idea to do something live.
Hold on. Did Pat Welch just call me brilliant? The show can be over now. The guest host, D. Paul Fleming, and his brilliant commentary.
Oh my goodness, this was fun. And I'm not going to lie. I literally I paced for 20 minutes in our basement, and there's my rosary, and I specifically prayed the entire rosary walking. I probably got in about 1,200 steps because it takes me about 20 minutes to do a whole rosary because I was freaking out of, man, this interview could go off the rails, or am I jumping into an arena I don't want to be in? And I was having reservations about it, and I asked for peace and wisdom as we talked, and so we're gonna have you back, and it may very well be a live episode. So any final words? Because we're going to jump off here, but I want to talk to you offline. So don't you go away. Any final words that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah. So know this, Pat. You're not the first person who said this while recording. Okay. I've had podcasters. One was in Canada. He said to me, "I got to tell you this. We've been talking for 10 minutes, and I'm just now stopping shaking." Is that good grammar? Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Good thing there's a computer, right? And I'm like, why are you shaking? And he goes, "I've been terrified of you for days." And I'm like, okay. Again, I'm making the facial expressions, but I've dealt with this my entire life, Pat. Okay.
Yeah.
This guy's in Canada. I'm on the East Coast of the United States. We're doing this by the same way we're doing it now on a computer. And he was terrified. He goes, this similar to what you were saying, go off the rails, all these things. So if that isn't proof of the energy that's out there, I don't know what is. But I can tell you that if you watch enough podcasts with me on it, you'll see people saying the same thing, Pat. I didn't know where this was going. I was terrified. You called me out. And here's the reason why. And it's very simple. Every now and again, God will sprinkle somebody's soul with the ability to get around people that makes them call themselves out. Now, what do I mean by that? When I walk into a room, say there's 20 people in there, 10 are going to hate me, 10 are going to love me. Okay. It almost defines in that perfect 50-50 split every time. The 10 that hate me, they don't necessarily hate me. My soul calls out their soul. What does that mean? That means I can see, sense, and know all the dirty secrets that they don't want anybody to know. And it's terrifying for them. Okay. The other 10 in the room can feel the love, the warm and fuzzies, and they don't know why. It's like, oh, I just like being around you. Okay. It's two souls interacting. Okay. So don't be shy about what you said or concerned about what you said. Many people have said the same thing. And if you get around me live and we just move around people, it's wild to sit back and watch. People, I'll go to a bookstore. One time, this lady with this headdress on, she looked like she just came out of surgery, just turns around and walks straight towards me and my wife from 20, 30 feet away. And when she turned, she started talking. She wasn't just talking. She was telling me her story. Okay. Now she's closing the distance. Okay. And I'm looking at my wife and I just look at my wife and I go, is she real? And she goes, I hope so. Okay. Because I for a moment wasn't sure.
I see dead people.
Like,
yeah.
do you see that? Yes, I do. Oh, phew. Okay. That woman stood there for 10 minutes telling me this story. And then when she was done, she just looked at me and said, thank you, and turned and walked away. I never said a word, not a single word. I look at my wife and I go, what the hell was that? She goes, I don't know. Okay. It took me a couple of days to figure it out, but I know what the purpose was. I'm not going to get into it. But my point is, Pat, we get together live, or if we get together in person, live on the cameras, or in person, it's an adventure. It really is. Man. Anyway, I better stop rambling before your tape runs out. No. Hey, this is D. Paul Fleming on Pat with Pat Walsh, baby. Thank you so much for having me on. And remember, keep the faith, keep moving forward.
Absolutely. And I close out every episode with remember, always strive to do the right thing at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons, because that's what warriors, servants, and leaders do every day. Love you all. See you next week. And hey, share this episode with somebody that needs to hear it today. Love you. See ya.